The cool and crisp morning breeze started to gently move the light mist that blanketed the village of Bree and the base of Bree Hill, and out into the surrounding land. Smoke from the chimneys slowly rose and then was carried westward as the sun crested over the far eastern horizon. Roosters throughout Bree signaled the morning wake-up call for many who called Bree home, but there was one who had already been up long before that call. Folco, already outside of the family home, secured his provisions onto Billy for the upcoming journey ahead that he had planned. "Well, my friend, are you ready? Ready for another adventure into the unknown?" Folco, in a low voice, said to Billy, trying not to wake his parents before he was well away from the house. Folco would once again leave before they awoke. He knew they'd try to stop him once again leaving the comfort and safety of Bree Hill. Folco had to go, however. His dreams would not let him rest, like they had before. Whether it was the experiences he had so far endured, or just the ring on his finger itself, a darkness crept and lingered in all of his dreams. Folco genuinely feared that it may corrupt his parents' dreams as well, and he had to find a way to stop it. He couldn't have it any other way. Thusly, he presumed he needed to find how to remove the curse that was laid on it, as Elrond instructed him to do last fall. To do so meant he had to travel south to Tharbad, and from there, find the lost elven city of Ost-in-Hendel to the east somewhere towards before the Misty Mountains. He studied the map that Elrond had given him of Eriador proper, a detailed copy from one of the Elf Lord's old maps. Folco was amazed at the speed at which one of the elven scribes was able to translate into something Folco was able to read. He had hoped to learn one day some of the language of the elves, to sit within the library of Rivendell and read most, if not all, of what was there, if Elrond would, of course, permit him to do so. Folco tightened the last of the straps, and taking his spear in hand, he guided Billy down the cobbled walkway of his family home and past the small hedge that bordered the main road, which led around Bree Hill and down towards the village of Bree. Folco stopped halfway down the hill when he turned to look one last time at his home and whispered, "Goodbye, Father. Goodbye, Mother. See you again soon." Folco took in a deep breath and walked on. He reached the south gate that led out through the hedge and past the dike and onward to the Great East Road. Hold on there, young master. And where is it you're going this fine spring morn?" the gatekeeper asked of Folco. "South. It'll be some time before I'm back this way, I wager, but hopefully before Midsummer's Eve. I have been practicing some new rings on the pipe, hoping to maybe give that Adelard Took a run for his umbrella." Folco smiled and chuckled. The umbrella, as it was called, was the mushroom-shaped smoke that Adelard Took blew to win him the Smoke Ring Festival Championship. "Ah, I see. Now that would be quite the sight to behold, I'm sure. I hope I don't get the short straw and be chosen to keep this here gate. Well, sir, I bid you farewell and safe travels." The gatekeeper lifted the wooden latch of the gate door and with a huff pulled it back and away, and waved Folco and Billy to walk on. "Thank you." Folco bowed his head as he passed the keeper and through the gate. "Come, Billy, let's go." Billy neighed in apparent excitement. It was midday when Folco and Billy reached the meeting of the Great East Road and the Greenway. A rather weathered and faded wooden signpost stood precariously slanted, almost as if to fall over with the slightest of wind. Although Folco knew the direction he was to head, he'd stopped and read the sign anyway, curious as to know for the first time how far each place marked was. Brandywine Bridge, the Shire, west 80 miles. Bree, east 10 miles. The Last Bridge, east 220 miles. Tharbad, south 240 miles. As he read, Folco felt something inside him, an urge to him to forgo his plan and instead head west towards the Shire. He remembered the first day he had left Bree Hill, throwing the coin into the fountain for good luck, walking, leading Billy with a curious excitement in his step to go and explore the Shire for the first time. Folco knew it was only 1 year ago, in fact almost to the day. It felt, however, much longer, almost a whole lifetime. What was to only be a leisurely visit to the Shire turned out to be something quite different and unexpected. Ghostly and viciously evil dogs, a very enigmatic gentleman, as if out of some fairy folk tale, a creature of unspeakable horror and nightmare, and a ring of silver that led Folco to the valley of Imlabjas, and then met by not just one, but 2 trolls on his journey back home, and just a short while ago in the company of the Forester of Archet. Folco walked a few steps towards the west, stopped, and then turned south and along the Greenway. The Greenway had been a well-traveled thoroughfare, or so Folco was told. What had once connected the northern kingdom of men to the south kingdom of Gondor had since, at least in this part of Eriador, fallen in disuse and disrepair. The north way up to the old and abandoned city of Fornos, the road is a shell of its former self. Barely a footpath could be seen winding around grass-covered hills. Only for the fact of some memory, one could mistake the road as some natural creation of the land, and not one crafted by the hands of men. To the south, the road fared better, but not by much. It was traveled, but very infrequently, and nowhere near the level of traffic as one now sees on the Great East Road. The day and weather remained pleasant for the rest of the first day, but Folco kept a keen eye out for any southerner or other foul thing that had rumored to occasionally waylay an unexpected traveler or company. Folco recalled his experiences on the North Greenway, the young woman who he had mistakenly judged to be just an unfortunate homesteader, lost and afraid. He then wondered if he'd cross again paths with the Ranger Tursdan, as he had done before. Night came and passed without a fault, and after first light and light breakfast with tea, he set pace once again southwards. The second day came and went, and Folco maintained a thready pace, traveling a good 40 to 50 miles by the time the sun set in the west and the stars came out to shine. The sun broke through an early morning fog that blanketed the countryside. Folco stayed clear of the west bank of the road, owing to the fact that barrows ran adjacent to the Greenway almost 100 miles before ending where the Greenway and the road from the Sarn Ford met. Every traveler from that has entered Bree spoke of a strangeness to the place, of eerie lights, a foul, scratchy voice over the winds, and thick mist that stuck low to the mounds and stones of these old barrows. Those who entered that land, whether by choice or unexpectedly, were rarely, if at all, seen again. To the east of the Greenway lay the South Downs, which in their own right was as mysterious and as dangerous as the barrows to the west. It did not, however, have the same wonder and awe about them, but what they lacked in mystery, they had in spades, ancient ruins of the old kingdom, and plenty of places for all kinds of unsavory folk in Orc, if the rumors held true. Let us not tarry too much, Billy. We are a long way from home already, and we have much further to go. Folco, now packing up his frying pan and provisions, and proceeding south down the road, panned left and right, occasionally looking behind him to see if he had been being followed. He sensed no troubles that morning, and the day turned warm and bright. The spring sun shone brightly. The wildflowers, now in their first bloom, tracked and opened towards it. Folco stopped for an afternoon tea when he heard something on the wind, now blowing from the south, up and along the road that had at this point dipped down into a low valley. He had perched himself on the hill just off the east bank, and this provided him with a good view north and south along the road. Coming now into view, he saw a lone horse-drawn cart coming up the road from the south. The sound of singing now came upon the wind. Well, more like a humming, of a tune he was unfamiliar with. As the cart drawn closer, he could now pick out a lone driver, an oldish-looking gentleman, garbed in dusty grey robes, sporting a pale blue pointed hat, and long matted grey hair flowed from underneath it. Folco smiled, for he had heard of the tales of an old grey pilgrim who had frequented the prancing pony, and travelled to lands far and wide, but he never, in all his young years, met him even despite his best efforts to run to the pony and catch a glimpse of him. Was this the elusive, mysterious Gandalf the Grey that everyone talked about? Was this the wizard that Bilbo spoke of when he recited the adventure to Erebor with the company of dwarves many moons ago? Folco hesitated. He didn't want to bother Gandalf, if it were truly him, as he passed on by. He also didn't want to spook an otherwise old traveler as they journeyed to Bree. Well, he assumed Bree, considering the direction the cart was headed. Before Folco realized, the cart with the old gentleman had now stopped on the road, directly across from where Folco was perched on the hillside adjacent. "Well, I'd never thought I'd come across a hobbit and his pony so far from the Shire. Or perhaps from Bree?" The old man now called from his seat on the cart. "Come now, don't be afraid, unless of course you're stayed here to rob an unsuspecting traveler. But then, what a silly thing to do. What, in plain sight of whoever is traveling north and south? And if you are a robber, then you must be a bad one at that." Flustered, Folco found it hard to come up with a suitable response. Well, you see, Yes, get on with it. I haven't got all day. I have many places to be, and many more I should be at," the old man chastised Folco. Folco now looked to pack up his belongings, but decided not to, owing to not causing the visitor further reason to anger. Yes, hi, well, I should say good day. Very fine travels on the Greenway today, wouldn't you say?" Folco smiled, a nervous twitch in his demeanor. "Yes, quite. I don't suppose you know who I am. And before you answer, I should tell you I half expect that I know who you are, even if you don't know who I am." The old man intensely looked at Folco. Folco now looked even more surprised that even they could possibly know who he was. Well, kind sir, you see, I more than half expect you are the Grey Pilgrim. I mean to say the Grey Wizard. Sorry, I actually mean to say Gandalf the Grey." Folco now closed his eyes and pulled his head back slightly, an obvious look of disappointment in himself for acting so far foolishly before the old man. "And how would you know who I am? Or you say I am?" The old man queried. Well, I am from Bree, yes, you were right about that. And well, although I never saw you with my own eyes, I had heard of you and how you, looked. And well, as far as I can recall, well, you seem to fit that bill." Folco waved and pointed his hand as he explained. "Is there anything else that could have triggered your memory on who I might be?" the old man again queried. Folco obviously gathered the old man was fishing for a particular answer. "Well, my friend Mr. Bilbo Baggins told me about Gandalf the Grey, and well, as I said already, you fit the bill. Even your mannerisms, as I am currently experiencing, further supports that assertion." Folco, now more confident, standing tall, as he said that last bit. Yes, there we go. Now that we have come to the reasonable conclusion together, mind you, that I am Gandalf the Grey, as you say, then by what name do you go by? Gandalf now raising an eyebrow, awaiting a response from Folco. Yes, pardon my manners. I am Folco Hornblower, and with me is Billy. Folco now turning around and pointing at the pony casually standing and eating some grass halfway up the hill. "Well then, Folco Hornblower, I am who you say I am. That is, I'm Gandalf the Grey. And I do think that this is a place to stop and take a rest. But let's head up over the hill that you're currently standing on, and let us set a nice fire. Gandalf now leads his horse and cart past Folco and up the hill and over and down the other side. Folco set the fire where Gandalf directed. Billy and Gandalf's horse were set us just off to the side. The two almost seemed themselves to be having a good conversation. Folco had no idea what they were conversing about, but occasionally during the time together, Gandalf would look over to the animals and give a small smile and a slight chuckle, and then look back over to Folco. "Well then, my young hobbit from Bree, apologies for me being so bold to abruptly ask, where are you headed?" Gandalf's tone and demeanor shifted to one of intense inquisitiveness. "Well, after I had visited Rivendell on an errand for Bilbo, I had quite a lengthy conversation with Lord Elrond, and he..." Folco paused, and Gandalf interrupted. "And then he what?" Gandalf now looked at Folco, like an overbearing parent waiting for his son to spill the beans about some misdeed they may have done without their knowledge. "Well, Bilbo's errand was part of the reason why I went to Rivendell. The other..." Again Folco paused, and now twisting the ring that was on his finger. "I went to ask about this ring I had found under the hills of Skerry." Gandalf now eyed Folco and the ring on his finger, and looked with intense curiosity at Folco. "Tell me, Folco, tell me everything that happened. Where you found it, how you found it, who knows about it." Gandalf spoke now with a stern yet inviting voice. Folco took in a deep breath, and taking in a draw from his fine briarwood pipe, he told Gandalf all of his story. He started from the beginning, from his first leaving of Bree, on through to the helping of the Forester of Archet to remove the threat of this troll to the small forest village. Gandalf, smoking his pipe, intensely listened, and never interjected once while Folco told his story. "And that's why I'm headed to Tharbad, and on to find Ost-in-Edhil. If I can, of course." Folco now finished, filling a cup of tea. The day was late, and the evening was drawing near, and Folco figured no further travel was to be had this day. "That is, my young Bree hobbit, a very fine tale. Not too many of you have a story like that to tell. Very interesting indeed. I will have to make a visit to the Shire, for it has been far too long since I visited there. Yes, I believe I shall head there after my time in Bree. I think I'm due. I do need to see about this nameless thing you speak of under the hills of Skerry. I fear you may have stirred something under those hills that the hobbits will not all be prepared for. Yes, they may be brave in a pinch, but this is something they've never experienced. Does anyone else know of this besides Bilbo and Lord Elrond?" "No, there are no others. I have not even told my parents, although they questioned me for some time this past winter about my sullen appearance and wanting to be alone most of the time. I didn't want to burden them with the overwhelming shadow that seemed to envelop me. Even now, despite the warmth of the fire and your company, the shadow seems ever present." Folco now stared blankly at the fire and down at the ring on his finger. Good. Gandalf now taking a deep draw on his pipe. "I wish there were a different way for you could travel to get to where you're going, that wasn't through Tharbad. It's a shell of its former self, and not one at all inviting. Even I fear sometimes to tread through that place. But it is the only path that you can take to get near where you have to go. Pay the toll, keep out of trouble, and you should be all right there." Gandalf paused. "Now, you'll find Ost-in-Edhil, the old elvish capital of Eregion, ruined when you find it. It'll be past what is the marshland called Swanfleet. The Grey Flood, which passes through Tharbad, runs through the marsh as well, so when you're ready, make your way up the river on its western banks." Drawing in on his pipe and letting out a ring of smoke, the wizard continued. "There are a group of wise women in Medcot within the marsh that you'll need to speak to. They are very wary of outsiders, but I think they'll be quite surprised to see a hobbit, as I don't recall ever a hobbit has ever been, unless it was before the time of the Shire and during the migration of the Followhides, the Harfoots and Stewars from the east of the Misty Mountains." Folco's ears perked, He had never heard of these types of hobbits. Where I just assumed we all had come from around the lands of the Shire and Bree Hill. Tell me more, Gandalf. I'm very curious to know. All in good time, Folco. All in good time. Let us keep focus on the task at hand. Gandalf smiled, but also gave a stern look, one that stressed the importance of staying on topic. Well now, where was I? Oh yes, Medcot. Seek audience with the wise women there. It will take some time for them to be even remotely welcoming, so do what you can to impress that you are not their enemy. I don't expect when they see you that would be the case, but you never know. Oh, and it's a good thing you've been to the company of old Tom Bombadil. There are creatures within the marsh that are relative to the creatures found in the Withywindle, and well, having that experience already may be helpful indeed. Who knows, you may find a guide in one of the otters or swans there. But you best be cautious. As for like the wise women, they as well do not take too kindly to strangers. Folco and Gandalf continued late through the evening, and as the mid of the night approached, Gandalf bid Folco rest. He had much longer journey to finish than he would have to his destination of Bree. Morning came and Folco awakened to a small fire, some boiling water, but no wizard. A small note was left under Folco's pack. Farewell, Folco. Unfortunately, I do have to leave your company early. Safe travels, and remember what I told you. Until we meet again, young hobbit of Bree Hill. Gandalf. Folco's heart saddened, but soon he felt uplifted to be blessed by the opportunity and the company of meeting the enigmatic wizard Gandalf. Folco didn't tarry and set off after a light breakfast. Once again the morning air remained crisp, few clouds with a bright rising sun. The day was looking to be quite enjoyable already. Folco set a good pace and Billy matched his stride, and the two companions strode on down the South Greenway on the way to Tharbad. 2 days passed without laying eyes on any other travelers, but Folco and Billy did not mind. Their company with each other was enough, with Folco retelling tales of their adventures so far, and Billy, ever the quiet audience, with the occasional neigh to weigh in on the conversation, especially when his name was dropped during reciting of a story. Midday on the 6th day since leaving Bree, Folco and Billy happened now on an intersection, where the Greenway running relatively north and south met the road that turned west and then north towards Sarnford and the south farthing of the Shire. Folco, as he did before, looked at the signpost. Sarnford, 50 miles. Tharbad, 120 miles. Bree, 120 miles. Well, Billy, we've reached the halfway point of our journey. Can't think of a better place at the moment to stop, rest our weary feet, and grab a lunch. Let's head over there on that hill, just off the road. Folco pointed over to the east of the road and led Billy now over towards it. Believe we should be able to see far enough in either direction, enough to see if anyone is traveling the roads. Folco unburdened Billy of the bags he was carrying, and Billy neighed in approval. Folco sat and had a small sandwich, with some preserved meats, a hearty cheese, and some rye bread. He panned the now scenic view he had of this part of Eriador. Far to the west he could just eye the trees in the valley that dipped slightly down, which would make the waterway of the Brandywine River. Past that, the green hue of the south farthing of the Shire, for now it was late in the spring and the grasses finally changing from the brown of winter to a fresh green color. To the north he could see the now brown-green mounds that made up the barrows, and a slight feeling of fear and dread crept over him. He was so thankful to have spent an evening with Gandalf, being in such close proximity to them. Would any foul creature of evil ever make threat with a wizard nearby? Folco wagered they wouldn't. Now, panning southward, he only could make out the endless sea of wild grasses and the occasional patch of freshly blooming wildflowers. The land rolled with countless hills and small valleys, and the road wound its way southward. Folco could see the occasional ruin of a tower on a distant hill, but there was no one about it. No sign of a smoke or fire to be seen anywhere he looked. It was a lonely place, and Folco could not think of any more name apt for it than that which was already given to it, the Lone Lands. Folco did spot, however, and if he hadn't been sitting and peering out over the lands, he surely would have missed it. There was what looked to be an old trail, a pathway that cut eastward from the main road and seemed to stretch then south, but in a more direct route. He studied it as much as he could from where he was, and it looked safe enough, and by all accounts probably safe himself. A full day's travel if he kept to it. He studied it some more, eyed some waypoints to memory, and feeling a little more uplifted by the new find, he set the provisions on Billy and led him down the hill and towards the newfound path. The path and the decision proved fruitful for Folco. He made great time and enjoyed a pleasant stroll through the wilderness. He saw the scattered remains of what would have been the old kingdom of men, Cardolan, but nothing that warranted further investigation. The occasional hewn stone, brick, or cobbled street Folco had seen, but that was all the evidence one could find that a kingdom of men once ruled these lands. Now it's just old stones and lost tales. 3 days passed, and Folco now found himself, what he wagered 50 or 60 miles, out from the river and the city of Tharbad. He made camp, as he had done so far this journey, on the north and east side of the road, and as always set himself over a hill and out of sight from it, for fear of bandits or unsavory passerbys that may see the light of his fire. The air was cool and damp, Folco thinking that the river Greyflood now brought moisture to the air, and as the sun set far to the western horizon, a mist gathered over the hills and the mounds that Folco found himself now surrounding him. Folco felt a wave of cold wash over him, and he quickly buttoned his vest and jacket and wrapped his cloak around him a little bit tighter. He threw a few more pieces of dried branches he had found and more on the fire. But aside from the increasing light, it did little to warm his body or his soul. Folco's senses tightened, and he now noticed the air was still and very quiet, almost too quiet. He felt and heard each beating of his heart and the slow breathing from Billy. Billy broke the silence, and with a loud huff and a dance, Billy feeling the now creeping stress that was building. Whoa, boy, whoa. Folco now standing and brushing Billy down in an attempt to calm him. Yeah, I feel it too, Billy. Something just isn't right about this place. Wait, what was that? Folco now stooping down, his ears perked, moving his head ever so slowly back and forth. And just off across on the next hill, Folco heard a faint sound of rustling metal, as if small chains were being laid down on the ground. Folco crouched now and slowly grabbed for his bow and quiver, which he fortunately had laid just off to the side. He kept looking in the direction of the sound he had just heard, and like a hunter stalking his prey, he slowed his breath, and ever so slightly drew out and knocked an arrow for the ready. Moments passed, what seemed like minutes, but was only seconds, when the croaking sound of some eerie creature now echoed through the air amongst the slopes of the hill where Folco and Billy found themselves. Folco then, and almost not thinking it possible, heard what was some form of speech.
Why do you disturb my eternal rest here, invader? Do you come to steal my treasures, Hornet? Do you come to usurp my rule over the land? Prepare to rest in darkness forever.
Folco now intensely looked in the direction of the sound, and faintly now, silhouetted against the night sky, he saw on top of the adjacent hill a humanoid, ghostly-looking figure. What firelight there was reflected off small ringlets of chain and a low, carried blade. It moved slowly now down the hill and towards the fire, Billy, and of course Folco. Folco opened his eyes in wide in fear, and for a few moments all reason fled from him. He heard his inner voice to try to tell him to run, but no agency came to his muscles to force his body to do so. Another eerie and ghastly croak came from the now faster approaching creature. What Folco could only think was some form of a white. Folco now snapped out of the trance he found himself in, and shaking his head, he grabbed what he could and without further thought, grabbed the reins of Billy. "Best we get out of here, and fast, Billy. That's a white, and unless you want to spend an eternity alone here, you best be coming." Billy now was frightened, but listened to Folco as the duo now sped up and over the hill and sprinted as fast as they could towards the road, the Greenway. What seemed like an hour, but only minutes had passed, and the Hobbit and pony reached the road. Turning to look behind, they saw no pursuer, and they both slowed their fast-paced breathing. "Well, Billy, that was close. It was a good thing you and I were paying attention. And we were still awake. I dare to imagine what would have happened if we were asleep and that thing was close by. We must be more careful from now on. That could have turned out far worse than it already was." Folco kept looking in the direction of the now apparent barrow that he had decided to break camp near. "Come, Billy, let's walk the road a ways and break before dawn. We can rest for a while in the early morning." Folco decided to not best stay near this place. Folco couldn't rest, even when the sun rose bright and warm over the distant peaks of the misty mountains that morning. Billy was just as wary from the encounter as well. They did not speak much that first day after, or 2 more the days that followed. They reached the crest of a hill that then gave them a clear view towards what Folco could only think was the city of Tharbad and the grey flood that flowed through it.